Chess YouTube, what is happening? This right here is a game played between Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja all the way back in the year 2020 in the Chess 24 Banter Blitz tournament. Now, I handpicked this game specifically for you guys because in the game, Magnus launches the most absurd attacking idea versus Alireza. You don't want to miss how this game went down. All right, in the game, Magnus opening 1e4, Alireza e5, and then we head for the Spanish with knight f3, knight c6, and then bishop b5. Now from here, Alireza goes for the Morphe's defense with the move a6, driving back that bishop. It goes to a4. Then we have knight f6, threatening e4. And here, the main move for white is going to be castles. But in this game, Magnus here, he plays an anti-open Spanish move. That is the move d3. Now, the idea behind this, first of all, you defend e4. But secondly, you avoid the open Spanish after castles and then knight takes e4. So instead here, Magnus avoiding all of those forcing lines and getting more of a quiet, simple game here. All right, from here, black goes b5, bishop b3, and then bishop c5. That is the main idea here, sort of in the spirit of the Italian opening for black. Now we have c3, d6, and then bishop g5, bringing out this bishop. It's a very common idea in the Ruy Lopez, in the Spanish, especially in this early 5d3 line from white. Now from here, black goes h6, bishop h4, and g5 is a very playable idea here. It's actually quite good for black. But instead, Alireza, he goes bishop b6. Now, the idea behind this, you're getting out of the way of the future d4 advance. That way, if white does go d4, you're not being hit by the pawn on c5. So, from here, Magnus, knight b d2, and then we have rook b8. Now, this move kind of confuses me. Alireza, I think it's prophylaxis against the idea of a4. If white goes a4, the rook is very well placed on b8, but it seems a little bit premature. All right, from here, Magnus, knight to f1, and this is where the game gets lit on fire. Alireza, I mean, the most logical move here for black is going to be g5, driving back this bishop, and if you play that, I mean, yes, the pawns are a little weak on the king side, but on the other hand, black also has the idea of going like queen e7, then knight to h7, then h5, h4, and so on, starting the kingside attack. Now, this idea is super common in the Italian opening, and it's quite good for black. But instead of this here, Alireza, he plays the move knight to e7. I mean, talk about poking the bear. The ball's on this guy playing this move versus the goat. The problem here, white can simply take on f6, completely ruining black's pawns on the king side, and that is what happens. We have bishop takes, then g takes. Now, yes, Magnus does give up his bishop. That dark squared bishop is so important. However, again, black's pawns on the king side are completely ruined. And you can imagine Magnus here, like getting a knight on, say, the f5 square and so on, like knight f5. I can't draw arrows. Knight f5, knight h4, and so on, reinforcing f5. I mean, this is just wonderful for Magnus. All right, from here, we have knight to h4, a logical move. Bishop e6, and then queen to h5. The Hikaru Queen flies out to the h5 square, pressuring the king side. Now here, Alireza, he's not a fan of the tension here. Of course, white is simply threatening taking on e6, as then the pawn on f7 would be pinned to the king on the e8 square. That would be a massive, massive problem. So here, Alireza, he plays the unthinkable idea. King to d7, getting the king off the back rank and out of the pin of the pawn on f7. That way, if white does take, black takes back with the f-pawn, and black is doing okay. Or perhaps even the king. We'll have to wait and see. All right, from here, Magnus, knight e3, a logical move. The knight super, super well placed on e3, eyeing both f5 and d5. Now here, Alireza finds a very, very strong defensive idea. That is the move queen to g8, sliding the queen over on the back rank, threatening, say, queen to g5, trying to trade off queens. And actually, that's very hard to deal with as white. Here, Magnus, g3 is the move, defending g2 in advance, but then, bang, queen g5 is the move, again, offering the queen trade, and the queen, even if you don't take on g5, the queen on g5 is super, super well placed here. All right, white, queen to e2 is the move. The queen flies back, avoiding the queen trade, a good idea. In the endgame, these two b's on e6 and b6 would be very, very strong. So here, Magnus must keep the queens on the board. All right, we have a5, gaining space. Alireza trying to basically seize the initiative all over the board, threatening a4, threatening f5 at some point, threatening maybe c6, d5. He's really finding some good play here for black. All right, white, knight f3, targets the queen on g5. The queen must go back. It goes back to g6. Then we have knight to h4, sort of offering a repetition of moves here. For example, queen g5, knight f3, queen g6, knight h4, and Alireza, he's got no choice but to go to g5. Then here, instead of knight to f3, Magnus, he makes the move d4. Now, this is super committal. I mean, you can't go back from this move. Here, Alireza, he takes on d4. White takes back, and then bishop takes d4. Magnus literally losing a pawn out of nowhere, and it wasn't necessary. For example, back here, you can't just go, say, knight g2, intending h4 or f4 with an outstanding game. So the idea of d4 here, completely unnecessary, and losing a pawn for essentially no reason. But of course, Magnus here, he is the GOAT. He must have his reasons. All right, white goes knight to f3, targeting both the bishop and the queen. Therefore, queen c5 is the only way to keep all the pieces alive. So queen c5 is the move. Then castles, and here Alireza, he takes on e3. We have bishop takes, f takes, and then a4, completing the idea started before with the move a5, pressuring this bishop. And again, so far, Alireza, that's a fantastic game. All right, here, Magnus. Rook c1 is the move, targeting the queen. The intermezzo move, very good. And here, Alireza, he has to find the right move as black. It's actually very important. If he doesn't, he will be in for a world of pain. So what is the right move here for Alireza as black? If you like puzzles, pause the video right now and try to find the right move here for black. It's actually not that hard to find. All you have to do is swing over to the h5 square, queen to h5, and it turns out h5 is a fantastic square for the queen. And keep in mind, there are some discovered attacks with the knight, but if the knight ever goes to e5, the queen simply takes it, and there is no queen takes h5 idea from white. So queen h5 would maintain the tension and give black an outstanding game. Instead, in this position, Alireza, queen to b4 is the move. Now, what is the problem with this move? Well, here, Magnus finds a series of incredibly strong moves to seize the advantage and put Alireza on the back foot immediately. He starts, bishop takes e6, an obvious move, black takes back, but then knight to d4, threatening ideas like, for example, rook takes f6, maybe knight c6 in the future, forking the rook and the queen. Of course, right now it's not possible, but it may be possible in the near future. All right, Alireza, how does he respond? He goes c5, pressuring the knight. Of course, now, in theory, there shouldn't be enough time to take on f6, as then you would simply lose the knight. But here, Magnus, I mean, this guy right here shows why he truly is the GOAT. He plays the move a3, ignoring the knight, instead counterattacking on the queen. And the queen, it's almost out of squares. It literally has to go to the a5 square. Everything else, including b3, b2, c3, d2, e1, c4, and d4, they're all covered by the white pieces. Therefore, queen to a5 is the only move. And here, Magnus, once again, he ignores the attack on the knight, and he plays the diabolical move, rook takes f6, ignoring the attack and simply going on the offensive. And what is the idea? Why in the world did he do this? Well, it's very simple. From here, black takes on d4, but this turns out to be a mistake. But there's not much else you can do. The computer here says rook b to f8 is the only defensive idea, but that is not a fun move to make. If you play that, you're basically, you're essentially cooked as black. So here, Alireza, he plays the only logical idea. He takes on d4, trying to call Magnus Carlsen's bluff, but it turns out Magnus here, he's not bluffing. He plays the move queen to g4, an extremely strong move, pressuring e6, and it turns out there's actually no way for black to defend that square. The queen can't defend, the rooks can't defend, the knight can't defend. That pawn on e6 is as good as gone, and of course it's also pinned. You can't go e5 trying to save the pawn, as then the queen would be attacking the king on d7. So this pawn right here on e6 is simply done. And with that pawn, Alireza, his entire game will simply collapse. All right, he tries to fight back. Queen d2 is the move, pressuring the rook on the c1 square. But here, queen takes e6, wins the pawn, the king goes back, and then rook to c7, threatening mate on e7, and this knight is pinned. Beyond that, queen to d7 is threatened, queen f7 is threatened. This is not looking good. All right, Alireza, he takes on e3. Queen takes e3. The king goes to g2. And here, what can you do as black? You can't defend this knight. If you go, say, rook to h7, then there are all kinds of ideas for white to simply punish black, including simply queen d7, checkmate. There are others, but that is by far the easiest. So, what can you do here as black? How the heck do you defend? Well, the computer says the only defensive idea is queen to e2, and if rook f2 blocking the attack, you sack the queen. That is how bad black's position is here. You simply have to sack the queen to defend. But instead, in the game, Alireza, rook to h7 was played, defending e7, and here Magnus, he simply finishes off his new rival with the move queen to d7, delivering the checkmate. Wow, what a game between Magnus and Alireza, all the way back in the year 2020 in the Chess24 Banter Blitz tournament. I mean, the entire game, starting with these two moves right here, knight to e7, and then bishop takes, leading to the insane pawn structure, and of course, finally, Magnus here in this position finding the finishing blow. Rook takes f6, giving up this knight in order to pressure e6 literally as soon as possible. He had to calculate everything out till the end, but this guy, I mean, leave it to Magnus to find the absolute best possible way to finish off Alireza in this game. All right, Chess YouTube, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash that like button and comment down below what you thought of the game. And as always, I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond, and I'll see you in the next video.